Hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Healing America and Beyond. I am Mary Grace, and I am here with somebody that you all know and love, probably Dr. Shawn Baker, also known as the Carnivore Doctor. Love your shirt, Dr. Shawn. Do we have audio with you?
I hope so. Yeah,
There you
yeah,
are. There's
yeah.
there's a little bit of a lag. Okay, so yes, we are live, and Dr. Baker is going to do some reposting and sharing on all of the social networks. I will continue with our intro here. If you are new to this and you didn't get the notification that we were going live, one of the best things you can do is go to my website, marygracemedia.com, get on the mailing list. We send out an email about 30 minutes to an hour prior to the show, and we try to do this on Fridays, every other Friday, that type of thing. We try to stick to 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you're the type of person that wants to calendar things, that's generally the time we're going to go live. And again, go to marygracemedia.com, get on the email list, and you will get notified just before we're going to do the show. Dr. Baker, you have been out and about all over the place, pretty much spanning the globe over the summertime. And it's kind of exciting because I've been wanting to ask you about just the overall mood, food, diet, metabolic health, what you're seeing around different countries in addition to what we have here in the US. What have you noticed besides all the dairy you ate in Europe?
I was in France. I spent a fair bit of time over in France and then in Portugal for a bit, and
Yeah,
had a lot of the cheeses over there, which are quite good. I think the French do a pretty good job
fantastic.
with cheese.
Yeah.
But it was in as far as I was, I just remember I was in Paris just a few days ago and walking around, and I just was walking, just checking it out. It's a real neat city to walk around, and listening to some people. And I remember there was a couple in front of me just discussing eating biltong and all the meat they were consuming, and so that's encouraging to see. And I do think that while probably the message is certainly becoming more and more prominent in the U.S. to eat more meat in general. I think people are more realizing it. I do think it's starting to reach an effect around the world in a lot of places. I think Portugal and I think that's just natural for them. They're not really bought up into the sort of the corporative plant-based narrative, because that's where it really came from. It was really a corporate push to get everyone to consume more of these plant products. You saw these processed foods with little leaves on them saying made with the power of plants, or some
Hmm.
other equally misleading message that somehow that's going to be better for you. And so yeah, I mean it's there's a sort of an like some countries like Italy, for instance, kind of banning all this fake meat stuff. And I think we see some states in the US actually adopting. I think Texas, Florida, and a few other states, Missouri, I believe, have said no, we're not gonna do the lab grown meat, which is
Yeah,
the
that's
sort of the
good.
next frontier, if you will, of stuff that people have to reject.
Well,
I think,
one, yeah,
yeah.
I think so too. Remember the push to make everybody eat crickets? Do you remember that? One of the things I remember from living in Europe is going to the grocery store in France. I was right across the border in Switzerland, and so I shopped in France a lot. And they did not allow any margarine products anywhere near the butter in the grocery store. It was actually forbidden to put those fake foods with the real foods, which I thought was very interesting. And I think that Europeans have done a better job, by and large, of protecting their food sources and being very more strict about the provenance and attribution of where the foods are from, like truth in labeling and things like that. And I know that's one of the things that you're pushing for here in the US. A lot of people are, so that when you do get food, not only that it's real, but that it's it's something we can trust, right? That it's not a frankenfood, um, a fake meat product or anything like that. I always love when I go to the grocery store and I see all of those Beyond Meat products drastically reduced because nobody would buy them. And so they're on like deep clearance sale. which is fantastic because that means nobody's getting it, nobody's buying it. So I wanted to ask you too. Do you think you were mentioning biltong? Um, do you think that do you think in general people overseas from different countries have a better attitude about meat consumption, dairy consumption, things like that? Do you think they've been less indoctrinated? I mean,
I think it depends on the country, to be honest.
mhm,
I mean, I think like if you look at some of like the Scandinavian countries, Germany in particular. I mean, Germany's obviously not Scandinavian, but I mean,
yeah.
Germany, some of the Scandinavian countries, they are really pushing from the environmental standpoint that they're full speed ahead on this. And I've seen
Mm,
efforts in that regard. At least, again, I've been to Germany a few times in a recent few years, and
yeah.
that certainly seems to be the push. But I mean, I think, I mean, different countries like France is very particular about their food. The Italians are very particular about their food. I think
Mhm,
Spain, they're very, they um, really want to protect their heritage. But I mean, as far as keeping those foods, you know, as they've always been. But at the same time, I think there's just a global push throughout the EU from the sense of, oh, we're going to save the planet through climate change. And I think, as you know, probably here in the US, we've gotten less enamored with the concept of saving the world by banning cows. I mean, it seems to be most people are stepping away from that. Whereas I think in
mhm,
Europe, it's still fairly aggressively pushed and believed. And I think a lot of people believe that. And I think that's something that we have to sort of disabuse people from the belief that cow farts are
mhm.
boiling the ocean and some of this other nonsense that's come out over the last decade.
Yeah, I think cows are the ultimate plant-based diet because they eat the plants and they make food for us. So, I think that's the perfect, life cycle of the plant is for the cows to eat it, at least as far as I'm concerned, and, since I cut back on plants, mostly 100%, I guess. I can't remember the last time I had a salad or a bowl of vegetables or anything. Um, I've noticed a difference, especially in joint pain for me. Like I used to have achy knees and joints all the time. And it was something in my family that I thought was a hereditary kind of thing. My mom had arthritis. And now I realize it's probably was what was in my diet, you know? And speaking of which, we were talking off air about something that you've been doing, which is you gave yourself a month of meat only because you wanted to come down off of the cheese from being in France. And tell us about that. Now you're known as the carnivore diet, the carnivore doctor. You wrote the carnivore diet, and you actually have a medical practice that helps people to heal through metabolic changes and especially going low carb, meat based diet. And so it's not unusual that you would do this, but can you talk to us about why you decided to do that?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, the guy that wrote the carnivore diet, I've kind of popularized that term. I've been doing it basically for almost 10 years now. And,
Mhm.
but my diet, there's been periods of time where I've eaten only nothing but like beef or red meat. I did that for up to about 2 years. And then, but over the time, I've kind of like, well, I'll include a little bit of dairy, maybe a little of cheese, a little yogurt, a little eggs and other non-beef products in there, and that's been my diet for the most of the time. And generally, I do pretty good. But I've been really ramping up my the stress on my body physically. Trying to run very fast, sprinting, trying to jump, trying to dunk a basketball as I turn 60, trying to run a sub 13-second 100 meters and some other things, and training with a lot of like I'm bringing a lot of Olympic lifting back in, so a lot of power cleans and snatches and things like that. And those things kind of can be a challenge to the body. So I've been kind of a little bit sore, sore tendons mostly.
Mhm.
And then I was in Europe for like I said, 2 weeks and eating generally a carnivorous diet, but including a lot of those dairy products and things like that. So I just didn't feel quite as good. So for the last today's September 5th, and so I actually started on the 31st. So I got back in from Europe on the 31st, and I said, well, I'm just going to eat nothing but beef for a month, and that's what I've been doing. And it is remarkable how good I feel from a physical
After
standpoint.
just
Just
5 days.
after, yeah, 5, 6 days now. Today's my sixth day.
Mhm.
Nothing but, I mean, literally nothing but beef and water and salt. And even the little bit of not joint, tendon soreness that I'd had prior to going to Europe,
Mhm.
gone completely. I feel like a new person. I'm just like, I was out on the track this morning sprinting, and I just feel like nothing at all even feels remotely sore, which is good. I mean, it's good because then I can push hard, which
Sure,
is what I
sure.
like to do. It's fun.
What I think is interesting is that, I mean, you're a clean eater for the most part. And so you're telling us that even going from what most people would consider a strict carnivore diet, with, like beef, butter, eggs, some dairy, right? That's all considered carnivore. You're saying that by eliminating all but the beef, you feel even better, which to me is remarkable because normally when people are at a baseline of health that you're at to start with, I wouldn't think that you would see that drastic of a difference if you tweak it a little bit. You know what I mean? As opposed to somebody that's going from a very unstable metabolic state to switching over to a carnivore diet. I mean, there's noticeable differences, right? It's obvious that in cutting out all of the toxins, they're going to see a big difference, right? I think it's remarkable to me that you're noticing that big of a difference.
Yeah,
Um,
it is to me as well because like I said, I've been doing this for so long, and I was just like,
mhm,
well, I'm kind of, and I generally feel pretty good. And I was just thinking that, well, some of this stuff is because I'm stressing my body so
mhm,
aggressively in the
mhm.
gym, but it is what it is. I mean, at least,
Right,
up to this
right.
point, we'll see. I don't know what will happen over the next couple of weeks, if it'll all sort of drop back into that because like normally I'll be out on the track maybe twice a week is all what I feel I can handle. I've been out there. Actually, I've hit 3 sessions already this week, and I feel great. So it's kind of
Mhm.
interesting that my frequency's gone up. My stress is higher physically, but yet I still
Yeah.
feel better. So yeah, there's something there, and I've seen other
Mhm,
people that'll notice that particularly things like dairy will just be a net negative for them. So it's
mhm,
interesting, and
mhm.
it's I like eating, the dairy products. They taste good. We enjoy them, but I mean, at the end
Yeah,
of the day, it is what it is, and we'll see
right.
what happens. I'm certainly going to do 30 days, and because I've done that all the time. Every year I would do a 30-day stint. And last year I didn't just because I was like, I'm not sure that I need to, but it appears that
Yeah,
it is what it
yeah.
is.
You're inspiring me. Now, if let's say that somebody is brand new. I mean, we have listeners from all over the place in all walks of life right now who are listening to you and they're thinking, hold the phone. 30 days of just beef and salt and water. It's a stretch for some people. However, we do know from listening to people in the carnivore community that for some people, the decision to go only beef, in some cases, has actually been a life or death decision. And so, what would you say to the person who's sitting here listening to this and thinking, I don't think there's any hope for the problems that I have. But what if I went with just beef? What would that look like, for somebody who did that? I mean, people who've done that. I know people who've done it. And what kind of changes might they expect to see? Let's say somebody's, 100 pounds overweight, arthritis, probably type 2 diabetes, probably kidney problems. What else? Gout, high blood pressure, like all the things that come with that. And they probably have a stack of meds and they have a doctor telling them, oh, it's just age. You see that within Rivero. You actually put up a testimonial from Rivero recently with a patient who I think lost 80 pounds. Um,
Yeah,
that
I mean that scenario that you put overweight with all these metabolic problems is a very common scenario. It really is, and this is something that, in fact, at Rivero, and we've now had almost, I think we're pushing close to 1,000 patients that we've now uh, treated. that is one of the more common scenarios that we see. And very commonly, we will see people obviously lose weight. We will see them improve their blood pressure, improve their metabolic disease, improve their A1C, improve their blood
Mhm.
glycemic control. They will often see their inflammatory stuff go away, their joint pain feel better. So these are all really common things that we see. And I think that the fact that, most of our healthcare system does not realize that you can, the things that you would otherwise throw 3, 4, 5, 6 prescriptions at will respond to nutrition, and almost in a very reliable way, to the point that it is,
Mhm.
in my view, should be the first thing we consider. And to a point, it, you know, you're letting folks down, and you're really doing them a disservice by not encouraging that and supporting that. And this is a thing, and I know we'll talk a little bit about what we do at Rivero, but we actually facilitate this. It's not just tell people, hey, change your diet. You gotta really support the people. You really got to provide constant feedback, corrections, adjustments, support, answer questions. And
Mhm.
the nice thing is we have the ability to interact with people on a daily basis, which is really unique and really cool and really fun.
Mhm.
And I'm looking. We started to analyze our first uh, hundreds of patients, several hundreds of patients, and looking at the average improvement, and it's significant, remarkable, and something I'm really excited to be a part of, and excited to see us
Mhm.
continue to expand our reach and scope and scale. So yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
it's
fantastic. I put the link up here on the screen, for anybody who wants to go. It's rivero.com. So definitely check that out. We actually have one of our listeners in the chat here who's been doing your program, Delia, one of our moderators over on Rumble. So she's got good things to say about it. Now there's one question that I think is a pressing question is, you eat a lot of ribeye and you're like the ribeye guy, but it's meat is pretty pricey. So for somebody who's deciding that they want to go this route on a budget, do you have to have steak? What's possible for somebody who's moving to an all beef diet realistically? More of like the Costco or Sam's Club budget, um, and not the ribeye budget.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I would say that just in general, with our Rivera patients, they're not all carnivore, and they're certainly
Mhm.
not all beef. I mean, some people are and can be. If that's
Yeah,
something you wanted to do, um, then ground beef is still, even today, with the increases in prices that we experienced due to the inflationary stuff that happened during the last administration, and the fact that beef, it's for those who don't know, that our beef supply in the United States is as scarce as it's been since the 1950s. We have the smallest size cattle herd that we've had in 70 some years,
yeah.
and a lot of that has to do with one. A lot of people say we've had some drought for the last couple of years, but there's also been, I think, a lot of uh, policy practices that have put a lot of ranchers out of business. Just
Mhm,
for a whole
mhm.
bunch of reasons, and
Yeah.
we could talk about some of that. But I mean, that has been an issue. But even despite that, you can still pick up ground beef, in the grocery store for
Mhm, mhm,
$4 or $5 a pound still, and uh, that it would be the mainstay of what a lot of people, because there's nothing wrong with it.
mhm.
Ground beef is just as healthy as steak, in my view, when it comes to how it impacts your health. I mean, and some people would say it's even better, depending on how you get that.
Right, and some people have had remarkable turnarounds in just beef patties, right? Just getting the frozen beef patties, make sure they're all beef, that they don't have additives, but, you don't have to be a gourmet chef or anything like that. Um, the the thing that I think is so good about what you're doing at Rivero and what people in the carnivore community are doing, or even keto, is that it's about eating real food, right? It's not even just going to all beef or all beef and eggs, but eating single ingredient foods, getting the seed oils out of your diet, removing ultra processed foods. And that's one of the things that when people go to Europe, a lot of times they come back and they say, "I ate this or that, and I didn't really feel bad," because it's usually cleaner ingredients and fewer ingredients in the food. So I think that's a real key as well. So if you were dealing again, like with Rivero, if you're dealing with somebody who's coming from a very sick place metabolically, um, are you're advocating for a clean diet, right? For
Yeah.
a to remove the highly processed foods as even a first step, like anybody can do that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I think a carnivore diet is a wonderful, wonderful therapeutic tool. It's what I choose to do personally, but I don't know that everybody needs to do that. In fact, I know that everybody
Mhm.
does not need to do it. You can get healthy in many ways, short of doing that. But for some people, it becomes a necessity. For some people, it is an absolute godsend. And it is, the number of folks that I can talk to you about and tell you about, and you, as you know, that have just absolutely changed
Yeah,
their absolutely changed their life for the better. That clearly is an option.
for sure. Yeah, and I think too, I just wanted to point out if you're if you're good at shopping sales, you can definitely stock up on discounted meats. You go in the store and you've got always look for the clearance pack. And especially if you have a freezer and you get one of those vacuum sealers, you can save meat for quite some time if you do that. So those are some things to think about. And again, looking at local sources for eggs, dairy, if you're going to do dairy, things like that. But really, it comes down to looking at the ingredients and looking at how many ingredients are in your food. If God made it, it's good. If man altered it, beware. And so that's one place that everybody can start is looking at what's going on with ultra processed foods and can you get those out or reduce those. And that includes fast food. And let's face it, fast food isn't even economical anymore. There's no such thing as a dollar menu anymore at McDonald's. So why anybody would go there is beyond me. Unless maybe you're just getting the meat patties, right? Which I think you've done before, or maybe Wendy's if you're traveling, things like that. But aside from that, you're not even saving money, you know? Um, Dr. Baker, do you want to take a quick break and then maybe we can take some questions from the listeners today?
Yeah, we can do that. I think it's we should probably touch on a little bit of stuff that's going on with the Kennedy, the most recent
Yeah,
congressional hearing that he was part of, because I think that is just
I
so
was
telling. But yeah, let's take a quick
I
break.
was thinking that. Let's take a break. We'll talk about our sponsors a little bit. We've been mentioning Rivero, but let's put them back on the screen really quickly, and then we'll pop over to a couple of the Mary Grace sponsors. So just give us a formal pitch for Rivero and what you're doing over there.
Well, yeah. So we are a online 50-state digital healthcare care company. We treat folks that have autoimmune disease. We take care of people with metabolic disease such as obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and inflammatory conditions. And we are changing the way healthcare is done in many, many ways. And I am just so happy and proud to be part of that, and excited to see all of our healthcare, clinicians, physicians, and so on and so forth that get it, that actually are excited to tackle the reason for disease, not just mask disease, not just put band-aids on stuff, not just provide another prescription, but to actually,
Yeah.
to do what needs to be done. And I think it's really exciting to be part of.
It's awesome. So Rivero.com, we have a QR code up here on the screen. You can scan it. But if you're listening or driving or whatever, hands-free, Rivero.com, you can go to that website and sign up. One thing too, we're talking about beef. Now, this is not the cheapest beef you can buy, but it's definitely some of the best. We have one of our sponsors here is griddownchowdown.com. These guys are based in the US. They're right in the heartland and they are supporting local ranchers and farmers. So if you're worried about that aspect of our food supply, definitely take a look at what they have. It's freeze dried, grass fed, grass finished beef. Here's what the 1 pound pack looks like. This is a pound of ground beef, and you rehydrate it, and it comes back as just fresh ground beef. You can buy a 3 pound pack, you can buy pre made patties, and they have a great subscription option. So some people just use this as their regular beef supply. Some people use it for prepping. Go to griddownchowdown.com and use promo code Mary Grace, and you will get the best deal. You do get a better deal if you do the subscription. The other thing I want to highlight here is some people um, are very interested in supplementing with supplements and nutraceuticals, and I encourage everybody to make sure that you're getting those things from trusted sources. I have a store, Mary Grace Essentials. You can go directly to that store and get your supplements and nutritional products sourced directly from the manufacturers. You don't really want to go to the big box stores and risk getting counterfeit products. You can scan the QR code here. We always have free shipping. We have subscribe and save options. And for every first order, you get 10% off. And so that's a great deal. We also have some peptides over there. You can take a look at that. The URL for that is maryggracewellness.gethealthy.store. It's also right on my website, marygracemedia.com. So please check that out, and take your health seriously when it comes to supplements. If you're going to add supplements and nutritional products, please go with trusted sources, and make sure that you are putting good things in your body I mean, it's kind of ironic if you're trying to eat healthy and get supplements, but then you're buying knockoff counterfeits that maybe have some dangerous products in them. You're defeating the purpose. So please go check that out. Mary Grace Essentials store over at marygracewellness.gethealthy.shop. And so we're back, and we're going to jump right into talking about, I guess, the drama on Capitol Hill, especially with RFK Jr. as head of HHS. He was grilled yesterday. I think it was yesterday, in committee for 3 hours, and it was like Mortal Kombat over there. But what are some of the things that he's doing at the agency that are standing out to you, as somebody who's been very invested in this space for a long time?
Well, I mean, obviously he's doing a number of things. I mean, I obviously have a significant interest in the nutritional recommendations. The USDA every 5 years puts out a sort of a roadmap for how we are supposed to eat. And most people will say, "Oh, I don't care. I don't listen to those guys anyway." But it does have a significant impact on school lunch programs. It has a significant impact on how we feed the military and any federal agency that gets federal funding. So it does have a pretty significant impact. And also the food industry does actually pay attention to this. And if we look at, Nina Teichholz has done a really wonderful job over the years in discussing how this does impact. And by and large, the nutritional guidelines that were first put out in the 1980 version of this, and then every 5 years subsequent to that, the food industry has largely tried to follow. We've seen a significant reduction in saturated fat available to us. If we look at like some of the NHANES data where it talks about how much food, the food that we eat as Americans, we've seen that we've largely cut back on saturated fat and fat that's coming from animal products. We've largely increased our fruit and vegetable consumption. We've largely increased our grain consumption. And the results are what they are. We see a sicker, fatter, more metabolically ill population. There's a new paper that just came out that looks at, how that has impacted the world in general, because the world follows what the United States does. And we've seen a decrease in IQ. We've seen a decrease in stature. We've seen an increase in obesity across the world, with the U.S. being at the forefront of that. So that's interesting. And so he has said that he received the recommendations from the panel, the 20-person panel, and he said it read like a blueprint from the food industry, from the processed food industry, and he's
Right.
not going to accept that.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And we know that personally, he stated that he has done essentially a carnivore-ish diet. He eats a lot of meat,
Mhm.
mostly, and he says he'll have a few other things, but he's definitely in favor of that. So I think we'll see a guideline
Mhm.
that pulls the brakes off saturated fat, particularly as it comes from whole single ingredient foods like beef, eggs, seafood, dairy products, things like
Mhm.
that, which I
Mhm.
think is a good place to be. He's obviously also taking a hard look at some of the medications that are out there, to include vaccines, to say, hey, look, we need to look at the science as it as it stands. And there's been I don't think my audience, your audience, uh, is I don't think any of us are naive enough to take a lot of the literature that's been funded at face value, because a lot of
Mhm.
it has been subject to conflict of interest and so on and so forth. So I think just looking at that in a more transparent light will have some real ramifications. And it's interesting to see some of the people on Capitol Hill, some of the various members of Congress, particularly some of the Senate folks, that are just clearly conflicted. I
Yeah.
think that's a nice way of
It's a
saying
good
that
way to say it.
they're basically taking bribes, I think,
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
many
they're on the
ways.
payroll. Mhm. What I think is interesting too watching RFK is this world is not new to him. And, he knows a lot of these people because of the research he's done, because, he's litigated against some of them on different things. And so and this world is not intimidating to him. And so watching him stand up to this onslaught of questions and doubt and even accusations from people who, like you said, are clearly conflicted. I thought that it was just very interesting to see how he interacts with them, even to the point of calling them ridiculous and stupid and things like that. That sometimes when you have people who are testifying on the Hill, they get really intimidated by these people, and he's just hitting back because he's a man on a mission who really truly feels that he has a mandate from God to turn this around, especially for children and future generations. So I think having somebody like that with conviction hopefully will help our country go in a direction that is going to pull some of the sickness that's gonna turn it around. I mean, kids are sick. Kids are really sick these days in America, and it's alarming to me, in a lot of ways, and I think that's one of the things that well, I know that's one of the things that drives him. So, I guess we could go onto this third rail topic because it is for some people the whole idea of taking, taking away the mandates of vaccines. That's something that's come up. And, there are people who feel very strongly that we need vaccines to be mandated for public health. And he's seems to be leaning against that toward giving people much more choice and respecting autonomy of individuals. Have you thought about that? Is that something that you want to talk about? It is
Sure.
kind of a third rail
Yeah. I
topic.
mean, I think that particularly when it comes to things like the COVID vaccine. I mean, a lot of people,
Yeah.
myself included, I did not take the COVID vaccine because I felt I wasn't, even if it was beneficial, which is highly, highly controversial. I didn't feel that I was in the demographic where it would be beneficial for me personally, nor did anyone in my immediate family do so. Having said that, I think it's like one of those things where, if it's available and somebody wants to take it, should be allowed to take it. And some people are
Yeah.
adamant, say this is something that should have no business being on the market at all. I know there's
Mhm.
positions out there, and I don't, I don't have enough, I guess, e- expertise to make that claim one way or the other. But I do think that choice and informed consent and mandating is wrong. I mean, I think informed consent is obviously right, but I think
Mhm.
mandates were wrong. Like cigarettes are on the market still, and a lot of people say they shouldn't be, but yet
Mhm.
people have freedom of choice. There's obviously horrible food on the market that is there, and there's people that say that shouldn't be on the market. And again, I tend to
Right.
lean more towards the sort of freedom of choice sort of thing, and having informed consent and being able to make your own decision for both you
Mhm.
and your family.
Mhm.
I think that we're going to see what shakes out of the next uh, few coming months and probably years. What happens?
Mhm.
The fact that the vaccine manufacturers have basically carte blanche to be completely immune from any sort of repercussion doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me. If you want to say, hey, this stuff needs to be on the market, it's fine, but you should, for those people that suffer harm from it, like any other medication,
Mhm.
they should have a way to be compensated and protected from things like that. So I think that's fair to
Mhm.
say. So I think the vaccine
Yeah.
immunity law that I think went on the book, I think around in '86, I think is when that
Under
happened.
Reagan. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
needs to be looked at and maybe revised, because we are now getting to a point where, you know, is it in the interest of the general public health or not when we're talking about,
Mhm.
you know, hepatitis B, or venereal disease type vaccines and things like that. Is that really,
HPV.
yeah,
Right.
HPV and things like that? Is that really
Mhm.
something that we need to indemnify complete? Just completely take off. Uh, you know, leave to where there's no recourse for anybody that might be harmed from things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the things that I don't think I realized fully that, I believe that children by the age of 5 have been injected 72 times. Now that's not 72 different shots because some of them are boosters, but that's quite a lot. And for example, they get the Hep B, the first shot on within hours of birth. And one of the things that I found out is that there haven't been any independent, I guess you call it double blind placebo trials on the efficacy or harmful effects of any of these vaccines, which is shocking because you have doctors telling parents, "Oh, they're fine. This is what your child has to do. They need to be here for their 2-month well visit." And I think people are starting to realize that's actually a vaccine visit. It's, if the child is not sick, why do they have to go to the doctor? And so, for me, I think that having the ability to take a step back and to say, "Hey, what's really happening with these shots? What are we seeing in terms of adverse effects?" I think there's wisdom in that, and I believe that that's what RFK is doing. He's advocating for let's get real data, let's get an understanding of true informed consent for these parents and their children, and let's look objectively at the adverse effects that have been reported over the years, over the decades. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think there's wisdom in that. And if it turns out that yes, you realize that there are certain things that possibly could be helpful in terms of community health, then reintroduce it. But I would be in favor of a moratorium across the board until we get much more sound data. None of this trust the science kind of jargon that people have had pushed on them, or especially over the past 5 years. Trust the science. Science is ever changing, right? I mean, you're a doctor. You've been in that world.
Well, I mean, especially when you start to look at some of the older studies that were done, and they basically didn't have any requirements to share a lot of the data that they, like some of the raw data was just completely like hidden, and this isn't just
Mhm.
with regard to vaccines. This is with regard to all medications that have been published out there. We've seen that these pharmaceutical companies have had basically carte blanche to basically make up data. And in some cases they have, or completely obscure the data or hide the data or fail to publish any negative data that's been done out there. So that, and still to some degree that's occurring. So when we look at some of these older studies, we have to say, hey, look, were they done in good faith, and were they done with full transparency? And I think the answer is no, they haven't been. So I think we need to,
Yeah.
we need to reevaluate things and revisit science and make sure that what we thought was true when we're dealing with some of these, these various companies that have been, many of them have been convicted of fraud and making up data, and to
Yeah.
say that, well, maybe they were doing this before in the past, and we should maybe look
Mhm.
into this stuff. And
And
it's
I
not to
think,
say,
yeah.
it's not to say that maybe the data will still show the same thing, and we can take a little more better, because
Mhm.
I think if you look at if you poll the average American and say, what is your level of confidence in the FDA, the CDC, major pharmaceutical companies, you're going to find that level of confidence is damn low, like close to zero for a lot of people. And
Mhm.
that shouldn't be the case. We should be able to trust these agencies and these companies. We should be able to.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is to hold them to a very high level of scrutiny. And until we do that, I don't blame, I see a lot of physicians out there frustrating. They feel like, well, it's all these influencers and conspiracy theorists, people are winning out. Well, if you had a,
The truth.
if you had a solid level of trust, then that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, and if you weren't taking financial incentives, from the vaccine manufacturers for getting your patients jabbed, especially at the pediatric level, it has come out that they get, incentivized and they get bonuses not only for having, a child or a group of children vaccinated, but for the percentage of patients in their practice, they get extra bonuses for that. And to me, that's an obvious conflict. And when you have doctors who are dismissing patients from their practices because they're choosing not to have their children take these interventions, that's to me a big red flag because if the doctor is worried about their quotas and they're dismissing patients from their practice because of that, that's out of line with, I think, the Hippocratic Oath, which is first do no harm, right? If you are getting money for every jab you put in somebody's body and you're getting extra money for having a certain percentage of your practice vaccinated, there's no way you can be objective. I don't think. Right? I mean, you had this experience when you were in orthopedics. You were actually told that you shouldn't be getting patients better because then they weren't getting surgeries, right? They were getting better to the point where they didn't need surgical intervention, and you got in trouble, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of, I mean, it wasn't quite that straightforward, but I mean, it was
Mhm.
basically, when I said, hey, I'd like to spend time helping people with their lifestyle in lieu of doing surgery on them, they said, we're not interested in that. We're not going to allow you to do that. That was the sort of thing, which is, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's about
Mhm.
generating a lot of, you know, income for, you know, certain industries. Quite honestly, it's not so much about helping people get healthy, which
Mhm.
is really a shame. And that's one of the things I'm so happy about what we do with Rivero. So we're not dealing with that nonsense. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it does cloud your judgment in some regard. I mean, I think it's, I'm not a pediatrician, so I can't speak to that. I mean, as an orthopedic surgeon, no one was paying me directly to prescribe drugs or to
Mhm.
do
Mhm.
certain, use certain, you know, uh, pieces of equipment for surgery.
Mhm.
But it's kind of like a roundabout being incentivized that way. We physicians basically are subcontractors for pharmaceutical companies, whether they want to believe it or not. We're not getting directly paid, but by doing that system, I mean, that's the only thing you really are allowed to operate within that system. So you have to
Mhm.
use some form of that in a large degree. I mean, it's not that you
Mhm.
couldn't do something else, but you're not incentivized, you're not paid, you're not encouraged, you're not giving any facility time or resource to do other things. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like, yeah, you're kind of more or less working for the drug companies.
By default, kind of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they make it difficult, if not impossible, to do something different. And I mean, I noticed that when we had my dad in the hospital for when he had a stroke, there were things that I was asking for, simple things like, "Hey, can we go outside and get him some sunshine?" And it was really scary to them. I was told by one nurse that they would lose their job if they put him in a wheelchair and took him outside, even on the hospital grounds. And I mean, I grew up, in near the University of Virginia. I had nurses in my family, and the original hospital at the university was made with these beautiful gardens attached to the hospital grounds, and they would roll patients outside into those, beautiful gardens, um, as part of their healing and convalescence. And now, you can't. There's no balconies, attached to any of the high-rise rooms, nothing like that. Um, so that's disturbing, right? When you have a medical professional telling you that it's forbidden to take somebody outside to get sunshine, when they're trying to recover from sickness. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like completely just nonsensical. And maybe they're like, well, it's risky to transfer him or break. They're worried about him falling or something. Maybe that's what they're trying to
Mhm.
say. But I mean, the reality is, yeah, I mean, it's some of the stuff. It just seems. Uh, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like when I was in the military, there was this stupid stuff. I mean, it was just like stuff that made no sense, and it was just like,
Mhm.
they were like, well, in this one, because of this 1 in a million chance it could
Mhm.
happen, we don't want you to do that. And I'm like, well, why don't I just mitigate that risk and do the right thing anyway? But I mean, sometimes it's like talking to a a rock or something like that.
Oh, for
Just
sure,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, they're so risk averse, and the fact is, I told the nurse that told me this. I said, so basically, this whole system is being run by lawyers and pharmaceuticals. And, he didn't deny it. I mean, but that's what it is, right? It's risk mitigation, instead of a focus on healing. Now we've got, I don't know, a gazillion questions, in the chat, and I don't know if you've been keeping track. If you wanna scroll up and maybe start with, uh, back at the top of the hour when people started asking questions.
Yeah,
They were everybody's excited to have you here, Dr. Baker. So, the
let
f
me just kind of blast through a few of these real quick. See what I
can you
can.
see the one for ALS? Because that was one of our early listeners, Terry.
Let me see where it is.
Any info regarding carnivore and ALS disease? So if she's still here, I would
What I
definitely.
will say with regard to ALS, there is a wonderful researcher. His name is Matt Phillips. He is a neurologist in New Zealand who has done research with regard to ALS and some other neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's, dementia, and so on and so forth. And he has seen uh, actually pretty significant improvements by using
Mhm.
ketogenic and carnivore style diets. So look up Matthew Phillips, MD, New Zealand. He's published some research, I believe, on
Okay.
specifically on ALS. And in fact, I did an interview with him
Oh,
maybe a year ago, talking specifically about a patient with ALS. So yeah, you can see potentially something to do. If I had ALS, I would definitely be on at the very least, a very strong ketogenic diet and perhaps ketogenic carnivore diet with that particular issue.
excellent. Okay.
Um,
I'm
we've
gonna let
got
you
what do we
just.
got here? Rivero. ALS. Okay, I saw that one. ALS and all right, just trying to run through the questions. Beef
Mhm.
is expensive in Canada. Yeah, no goodness, sorry. Canada's got a lot of issues. Gosh, I see some of the stuff that's going on there, and it horrifies me. Just in regard.
Just so many things in Canada. Scary. Yeah.
There's a comment from John Kelly. Been on carnivore 6 months, blood pressure, stack of meds now, off meds, and good blood pressure for 6 months. That's awesome to hear. I was trying to look for questions.
One thing I wanted to say to listeners, I forgot to say this. If you do have a question, if you could preface your question with QQQ, that will help us to distinguish your questions from your comments going forward. And we'll try to remember that on the next broadcast. Just put a QQQ at the beginning of your question.
Yeah, here's a question from Richard saying, "Hi, HDLP or LDLP rather, HDLP is particle count. Um, LPLI score is 71, glucosodium chloride, homocysteine stuff. It's like, how screwed am I? I mean, like I said, when we start looking at the minutia of labs, I mean, I would say just in general, the things that I think are most helpful to concentrate are on our body composition, particularly around central obesity. So if you have big old belly or a lot of excess central fat, you got to get rid of that. That's clearly the most important thing. And I think then you start looking at things like your blood pressure, things like your level of overall inflammation. And those are things I would really focus on. And that's going to be responsive to nutrition, sleep, uh, not being sedentary, mitigating stress, managing stress, and then also how we interact with the light. Our circadian biology is important. So, try to sync yourself with the day-night cycle appropriately. And I don't have, unfortunately, time to go into all those things, but those are things I generally look at. So someone had a nightmare last night that I passed away due to heart failure. Well, I'm glad I'm still around.
That's crazy.
I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it didn't happen. It's kind of funny. I remember a few months ago, somebody had shared a post about how I had died and stuff like that. And I said, well, I guess carnivore brought me back to life or something like that. No, not.
I don't know if I would share a post like that. Oh gosh, yeah. Who knows?
Let's see. There was somebody commenting about the Wall Street Journal article on babies and carnivore and the topic of babies, children fed carnivore diet rather than adults with autoimmune disease, etc. I'm not, again, I am not of the belief that children have to be on a carnivore diet by any stretch. I mean, I know of a lot of kids that are and they're doing fine, so I'm not worried too much about it. But I mean, I in my sort of framework, I generally use it as a way to get healthy for people that are sick. And generally, kids shouldn't be sick. I mean, if you're raising them right, they should be healthy kids. So, but I don't have a problem with them, people doing that, as long as the kids are eating enough and they're making sure that the kids are, if they're young kids, are staying on the growth curve and doing well. And honestly, the parents that have kids doing that, they seem to all be doing well. So I don't have, I have a hard time saying that you can't do that. But again, at the same time, you just have to be careful. I think the harder thing is really to keep your kids away from the garbage, because the garbage is ubiquitous and everybody's shoving it down our kids' throats. So it's one
Especially
of
if
those
they
things.
go to school. It's a little better now because I think they have so many restrictions, but they don't allow homemade foods now. So pretty much if there's a birthday party or anything, it's gonna be highly, highly processed, chemical laden treats, you know? It's gross.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're worried about people that don't know how to cook, or maybe they're worried about somebody adulterating the product or something like that. Like they're going to slip some
Nuts.
poison in there or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame. It really is, because I mean, all that
yeah.
that prepackaged, pre-made stuff is complete garbage. So they might as well just get away from doing the stupid, you know, cake parties and pizza parties anyway.
Mhm.
Here's a
Yeah.
question from, it says, is it Kevin? I think Kevin Curtis. It says,
Kevin, yep.
8 months, good results. Think I was over limiting my fat intake, so increasing fat improve overall results. Well, it depends. I mean, I think that it depends on if what it would look like if you're not consuming enough fat. Probably, maybe you're just low on energy. Because fat is your energy in the sense of a carnivore diet. That would be my biggest concern. If your energy's fine and you're doing well, you don't have to increase the fat. I mean, I think it's I know there are people that are advocates of consuming lots and lots of fat on a carnivore diet and eating things like sticks of butter. I find that that's useful for some people, but for a lot of people, it actually leads to weight gain and actually sort of not good results. So you just have to be careful around that. What what steak do you get with strip steaks? I'm not sure what that question means. I mean, when you get strip steaks, what steak? With a strip steak, it's usually a New York strip, so you're getting, um, the strip loin. I mean, cut up. I mean, that's what the New York strip is, or strip steak is.
Oh, Delia and Millie were having a little
Oh
conversation.
gosh. Okay.
They were talking
That's
about different. Yeah, Millie was saying she buys the big, the full
yeah.
strip.
The subprimals. Yeah.
Yeah,
Subprimals
and
and
then
cuts them up. Yeah.
cuts it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what she does. It's a
Yeah.
little cheaper and
Exactly.
less
Yeah.
fatty than ribeye. Yeah,
Correct. That is
those are
correct.
our moderators over in Rumble, Millie and Delia.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Ribeyes tend to be a little more fatty than strip steaks. So,
Mhm.
let's see. Blah, 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 blah. See if I can find another question here that's looks I can answer in a reasonable fashion.
I'm gonna see if I can find any for you. Let's see. For some reason, we don't really see the X comments, and if we do, they're few and far between. Okay, so here's Bobby Witt Anderson. Do you see that question? I've been
Yeah, I
carnivore for
said she's been
months.
carnivore for a number of months now.
Okay.
Keto flu effects and still having stupor after eating. So I assume that maybe we're developing some fatigue after eating. I think that that's something that I often see with people, and it sometimes is amenable to the size of the meal. So sometimes just because on carnivore, a lot of people like the convenience that they can eat infrequently. They might eat one meal a day, 2 meals a day, or something like that. So they're often eating larger meals than they might have used to have eaten, and sometimes that's something that alone, just the size of the meal, it can lead to, because you're shunning blood to the gut to digest, and that can have an impact. So sometimes just for a while, dialing down the size of the meals and maybe spacing them out a little more. Maybe instead of doing 2 meals a day, you go to 3 or 4 meals a day, but smaller size, and see how that impacts you. That might be
Mm.
something to deal with. Also with fatigue, you always have to think about sleep. And I think that making sure that you're getting good sleep. And one thing that does that is not eating big meals before bedtime. To make sure, like if you're going to do kind of a more of an intermittent fast style strategy where you eat, once or twice during the day, moving that window earlier in the day so you have the bulk of your calories early in the day while you're still awake while the sun's up, and avoid those big heavy meals at night. I think there was some other question about something about electrolytes, chloride being with chloride being only 113. Can ease back on the salt. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look. I can't remember the top of the reference range for chloride, what it is. I don't think it's too much. I don't think you're probably too much out of range. Um, I would just, most of the time you usually just repeat the lab and it comes back. Usually it's in the normal fluctuations of day-to-day thing. I don't know that, I mean, you could try cutting back on the sodium a little bit if you're heavy-handed. If you're over-consuming salt, and often we talk about people under-consuming it, and that salt is not necessarily the big problem that a lot of people say it tends to be. Often high sodium and high salt consumption is associated with negative outcomes, but that's primarily because where do most people get most of their sodium from? It's from consuming all these ultra processed foods, where sodium is ubiquitous as a kind of a shelf stabilizing product. So we get most of our sodium from, potato chips and cookies and pretzels and breads and all the crap that's on the shelves, and cans of soup and canned products and boxed
Fast
products,
foods.
fast foods and whatnot. So I think it's
Mhm.
more of that than the sodium itself. But I mean, if you are over consuming sodium, you might have things like fluid retention, those, hypertension, not fluid retention, high blood pressure. And if that's still the case, then you might want to cut back. Although again, I want to be clear, for most people, sodium doesn't seem to impact their blood pressure. I know we hear about that as something to do, but only about 10 to 15% of the population is actually salt
Interesting.
sensitive to where blood pressure is a problem. And that's usually in the context of hyperinsulinemia, metabolic disease. And once you fix that with a good diet and a lifestyle, then it goes away.
Do you see the question about psoriasis?
I don't yet. I
What
was
are the
looking.
best foods to heal psoriasis?
I just did a video on psoriasis on YouTube.
Oh,
It just came out today. So why don't you watch that as it was just released a few hours ago, the whole long comprehensive video on psoriasis. But within the context of a carnivore diet, dairy products can be a problem. So I would say if you're doing carnivore or something like carnivore, dairy is an issue for that. There was a question about POTS. The vaccine gave me an immediate POTS flare. I blacked out on the floor in front of mine. Well, it's celiac. No, I don't recommend it to pregnant women or children. We needed more research. Yeah, I mean, agree. I mean, I think that, and I was kicked off of YouTube at least 5 times for just discussing the COVID-19 stuff. And I just said we need better informed consent was basically and I think we needed more research. And just saying that was enough to get you censored and kicked off, which was,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was just, again, crazy that I had, as a physician, as a trained physician that had been practicing medicine for many, many years, to actually not be allowed to have a discussion around informed consent was just, I thought it was just criminal, quite honestly.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, it's interesting because, going back to the childhood vaccines, it's very rare, I think, for a doctor or a nurse to offer a parent the package inserts from the vaccines. And I was with a friend a couple of months ago. She took her baby in for something not vaccine related, but the doctor was, of course, starting the push for that because the baby was 2 months old. And she was starting to list all of the shots the baby would need by the time she had her next checkup. And so I just, the mom expressed some reservations and I asked for the package inserts and they gave them to us. And it was shocking to me because even though I know this stuff, you read over and over, like every single vaccine, it says that it's not recommended for somebody who has adverse reactions to X shot. And it's like this vicious cycle because it literally says, like, for the rotavirus vaccine, that it's not indicated for children who have severe reactions to the rotavirus vaccine.
Mm.
So it's like, wait a minute, and there's multiple series shots in the series. So I guess they're saying, like, if you had a bad reaction to the first one, you don't continue it. But it also says that it does not prevent the rotavirus right there on the insert from the drug company. But parents aren't being given that informed consent because they're being told you have to do this because it's required for school, it's required for this, it's required for that. So it's just assumed, I think, that even if you do ask, it doesn't matter because it's still required and you have to do it anyway. So I just thought it was very eye-opening to read through those inserts to see basically they're saying it doesn't work. And if it does work, it's probably gonna, give you some adverse reactions. Crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those things that if we were to like look at the actual benefit versus the risk, the
Yeah.
benefits tend to be pretty minuscule in a lot of things,
Mhm.
and the risks are real and in
Yeah.
some cases devastating for some people.
Mhm.
I mean, for the most part, I think we just do a lot of stuff that doesn't really make much difference, quite honestly. I mean, just across the
Yeah.
board in medicine.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's some things that clearly work, and I think we do a pretty good job with acute care. But when it comes to, and I'm certainly not the first person to say that. When it comes to managing and taking care of chronic disease, we just don't do a very
Mhm.
good job.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think we're at the end of the questions, and we're also just over an hour. The
Mm.
time really flies here, and we've had a fantastic audience on all of our platforms. Just so people know, we're streaming live on Mary Grace Media and also on Dr. Shawn Baker's platforms. So we're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble. And we so appreciate everybody who's watching. And if you're just coming in, if you didn't get the notice, we do want to make sure that you get notification of future shows. You can go to marygracemedia.com and get on the mailing list so that you will never miss a show. Also, if you follow me on social media, if you follow Dr. Shawn Baker on social media, you will continue to see clips and reminders of the things that we're discussing, the things that we're learning, I find Dr. Baker's content to be incredibly valuable and inspiring, especially when he's jumping up on boxes all the time. Um, so I'm like, I don't think I could do the quite the high boxes because I'm height challenged compared to you. But it is inspiring and it makes me want to lift heavy things and move things around. So I hope that you guys are taking advantage of, consuming his content and going through his YouTube. He has some great interviews. He interviewed me. When was that? January, February of this year?
Yeah, it's a while back. I can't
Um,
remember. It's been a while, but yeah.
mhm. Yeah, so you can definitely wanna check that out. Dr. Baker, before we go, let's just let people know one more time how they can find Rivero and
Yeah, well, Rivero.com. I would love to, meet with you guys because I meet with all the patients every week. I have a big meeting and we talk to patients, and it's cool to kind of see people's stories and chat with them and answer their questions in person, kind of. And so it's a lot of fun. So if you know somebody, or if you yourself are suffering from an autoimmune disease or metabolic disease, diabetes, obesity, and you'd like a team that is dedicated to getting you healthy and treating the root cause and not just slapping medications on you and telling you to go eat cardboard and take statins, then check out Rivero. We'd love to have you.
cardboard. Is that also known as rice cakes?
It could be.
Um, that's pretty much cardboard, yeah, and, just as a reminder, don't forget our favorite, beef guys, the griddownchowdown.com, promo code Mary Grace, save American ranches and farmland. Go to griddownchowdown.com. This is today's sponsor, and you won't be sorry. You are supporting the heartland of America right here when you buy this product. Use promo code Mary Grace. Any last words for today, Dr. Baker?
Goodness. I think this is something that I think, I'll just go back to our discussion around RFK. He's trying. As you can see, he's got a lot of things that are poised against him. And we have a narrow window to fix this thing. And, I don't know how much is going to be able to get done, but I will tell you that if all of us Americans and whoever else might be listening, put the pressure on and stop. Like I said, if you don't like the way the food industry is treating you and feeding you, don't give them your money anymore. That is as
Mhm.
simple as it is. You make
Yeah.
them change the market. The market will dictate where things go. And the same thing with the healthcare stuff. You can say, look, go to somebody who's doing it the right way that you appreciate and support those folks, whether it's
Yeah.
our company at Rivero, some of the other folks that are practicing metabolic health. Support these folks. Stop giving money to the people that are poisoning you, and that's what's going to change things ultimately. Because RFK, you can see he's battling. He's in there, and he's got the world lined up against him. And a lot of
Yeah.
money, trillions of dollars of capital that doesn't want him to be
Absolutely.
successful. So we have to we
Absolutely.
we have to back him up and back ourselves up.
Mhm. For sure, for sure. There is one question from Rachel, and I wanted to encourage you, Rachel, go ahead and go to Rivero.com and fill in the contact sheet and put your question on there. The team will reach out to you. And I want to also give the disclaimer that everything that we've talked about today is for educational purposes and informational purposes. I am not your doctor. I'm not a doctor. Dr. Shawn Baker is not your doctor. We have been trying to give you education and information. Please, if you want it, don't make any medical decisions without consulting with your medical professional. Take everything that you've had here as educational and informational. And as always, I want to encourage you, go outside, touch some grass, look at the sky, put your phone down, and just breathe. Take some time to breathe in fresh air and have a reset in your mind, and definitely get yourself good sleep, and just be quiet the noise and take some time to get yourself healthy. We will be back for another episode of Healing America and Beyond right here with Mary Grace and Dr. Shawn Baker. Thank you again, and thank you to our moderators on all of the channels today. Have a great week.